Welcome back to the Trash Talks podcast, the official podcast of Second Life, where environmental conservation meets innovation. We're combining drone tech, AI, community, and research to restore our oceans and give the planet a second chance. From drone powered cleanups to community led activism, every week we dive into another topic that we hope will inspire you for change. My name is Chiara Paternostro. I'm an intern here in the Public Affairs Department of Second Life, and I'm very excited to be one of your hosts here on the Second Life's podcast.
And hi, I'm Lina Schirmer. Like Chiara, I'm also interning in the Public Affairs Department at Second Life, and I'm very excited to be back today with another really interesting guest speaker. So we hope you learn a lot and have a great time.
Today we're looking at three powerful forces: artificial intelligence, environmental protection, and a generation Gen Z that's grown up navigating both.
So to kind of set off the scene and to build the landscape, we all know that AI has been, or AI development more specifically, has been accelerating rapidly. So in 2023 alone, the number of AI-related bills doubled worldwide, more than doubled. Yet only about 1 in 5 countries have any AI-specific regulation in place.
Yes, and the Union's AI Act, passed in 2024, is the first comprehensive law of its kind. Elsewhere, regulation is emerging in pieces, often reacting to new developments rather than anticipating them.
And then we have Gen Z, which is kind of funny because today that basically everyone on this podcast or on this recording today is characterized as a Gen Z individual. And we're all deeply embedded in this moment, in this kind of wave of change. So globally, nearly 60% of young people aged 16 to 25 say that they feel very or extremely worried about climate change, according to the 2021 Lancet study. Almost half say that this concern affects their daily lives.
Yes, I know myself. It's very much on my mind, especially in the discussions of the future and what exactly the planet's going to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now. And while burnout is real, so is action. Surveys show Gen Z is more likely than older generations to participate in protests, boycott brands over environmental concerns, and use digital platforms for political organizing.
And there's the digital platforms. They're all, they can be Instagram, they can be Snapchat or TikTok. They're all growing too. And this has really amplified the reach that youth and Gen Z has. So I think we all remember in 2019 the global climate strike, which mobilized more than 7 million people in 185 countries. And this entire coordination would have been so much slower without all these online networks already in place.
Yes, we're truly in a very new digital age that's evolving at rapid speeds. However, challenges still persist where digital activism often peaks around a trending hashtag and then it subsides, while the underlying problems themselves still remain.
That's why in this episode, we're really kind of asking how can we create AI systems that protect rights and promote sustainability? Is Gen Z uniquely positioned to lead change? And how do we make activism effective beyond just kind of the doom scroll of social media?
And that brings us right into today's episode. Joining us is someone who can discuss regulations and revolutions in the same sentence without blinking: Charlotte Carlson, AI law expert, human rights advocate, and a force to be reckoned with in Gen Z. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to our show. For anyone who hasn't had a chance to get to know you, can you give us a brief intro into who you are and what you do?
Hi, Chiara. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. My name's Charlotte. I'm the UNICEF Young Ambassador for Western Australia. I'm a third year law student, and I'm really passionate about the intersection between AI, law, and ethics. I'm also the founder of Gen Z Abroad, which is a youth led organization connecting young people across borders through articles that we publish and our financial literacy program. As someone who's excited about AI, I'm really excited about the amazing work that you guys are doing at Second Life, and I love all things youth led. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, thank you again so much for joining. And we're going to get right into our questions. So, We wanted to start off with the big picture, or the big kind of big picture question. We're living in a time where AI, or artificial intelligence, is developing at such an unprecedented pace. So, in your view, how do we strike a healthy balance between encouraging innovation and ensuring the appropriate legal and ethical safeguards?
Thanks, Lina. Yeah, this is such an interesting question, and it might even be the biggest existential question that humanity's facing right now. And it's really important that as societies living all around the world, we are consciously thinking about this because obviously innovation is really important. We would be nowhere near where we are today without innovation. But of course, it's so important that we also protect human rights because not enough innovation leads to stagnation, but too much innovation without regulation is really dangerous and so much can go wrong along the way, which is what a lot of the current research is showing. And AI has like such amazing potential to support humans across so many sectors, like healthcare, environmentalism, like what Second Life is doing, and so many other things. But now that we're a few years into mainstream AI use in society, we're also starting to see the scary side of it, like potential human rights abuses that are occurring and bias in AI systems, which brings so many problems in so many different sectors around the world. And I really think that the key to striking this balance between innovation and ethics is for governments around the world to adopt a human rights driven approach when designing AI law and policy. Because most of the time, it's not that AI systems are intentionally bad, but often it's just that at the design stage, the system designers are not actively foreseeing and safeguarding the systems against things like bias. And that's when we see the issues starting to come up.
Who do you think is leading the way in setting meaningful regulations right now? Are there any models or legal frameworks that stand out to you as particularly promising or even the opposite, particularly worrying?
UNESCO, I think, is really leading the way globally in championing human rights driven AI policy in so many different countries right now. Last year, I was really lucky to do a traineeship at the regional UNESCO office in Jakarta, which works in 5 member countries in Southeast Asia. And during my time there, I was in the social and human sciences team. And one of the things that my team there was working on is the adoption of the readiness assessment methodology, which is this framework that UNESCO's developed based on the recommendation on the ethics of AI from 2021, which applies to all 194 member countries of UNESCO. I believe it's currently the most globally accepted AI ethics standard that we have at this point. And what's really amazing about that is that UNESCO is working with governments and the private sector in many different countries to translate these ethical principles from their recommendation into concrete laws and policies. And the reason why this is so important is because the 2021 recommendation itself is really great and it covers some really, really important ethical problems with AI and how to safeguard systems and societies against those. But unfortunately, it's not a legally binding document. So countries can basically choose whether or not they follow it, and there aren't any real consequences for not following these ethical principles. So it's really important that governments around the world create their own domestic laws and policies that are actually binding, which include these ethical principles included in the 2021 recommendation.
And so, Charlotte, I quickly want to go back to what you said in the first question because you mentioned bias, and that's also something that we mentioned in, I think, even Chiara and I in the first episode of Trash Talks, where we kind of emphasized that there's still a growing concern with AI, and especially if it's left unchecked, can pose such significant risk to the fundamental human right. which kind of range from surveillance overreach to algorithmic discrimination. And then I think again, like the issue of bias definitely comes into how you use all these tools that are given to you. But we wanted to ask you, what are some of the other key risks that you've seen emerge or that you're seeing emerge? And then, like, how do we begin to build an international consensus around these issues? Maybe also make something which is a globally legally binding, agreement, or is that even possible around these?
Yeah, it's another really great question, Lena. And as young people, we're exposed to AI all the time, and we're seeing it in so many areas of our lives these days. And particularly as university students, I think one thing that comes to mind is plagiarism with, our friend ChatGPT, who has obviously become very popular with uni students in recent years alongside other generative AI platforms. Um, it is pretty scary to think that one day you might go to the doctor and be seen by a doctor who didn't get their degree from actually studying the textbooks, but passed university through ChatGPT writing their assignments. And that's really concerning because if young people now are relying so heavily on technology to get through their degrees, it really calls into question the integrity of traditional education systems and will our degrees be worth what they once were? Even though we now have systems that are catching up and that can detect AI use, I do think that the AI systems themselves are developing faster. So I think that this does remain an ongoing issue, but that's just one of so many different examples of AI risks emerging. Another one that I think about often is copyright and intellectual property, which is particularly important in my field of law. AI systems stealing artists' original work without crediting and referencing is another really big issue. And that goes beyond just the legal issues of intellectual property and copyright, but it calls into question a bigger existential and ethical issue of what really is the value of art, because we've always thought of art as something that is so unique to humans and something that sets us apart from other species. But if art can be created by a computer, it's pretty scary, isn't it? Um, and also in the legal profession, we're now seeing a lot of issues where lawyers are going to court with hallucinations or made up sources in their cases. And we now have judges pointing out in formal published court cases that lawyers have been referencing cases which don't even exist, which again is really concerning. So we're seeing the integrity of these systems that we've always thought of as very reliable and traditional and evidence based, all of that is coming into question now with AI. So it is quite scary, but I think it's also really interesting to look at and analyze and think how can we step forward into the future and design systems that do protect our humanity, our originality, our creativity, our intellectual property, our human rights in a way that also supports innovation. And what you said about international consensus, I do agree that's really important, and that's why we have these bodies like the UN who set global ethical standards on certain issues. Um, as I touched on a bit earlier, we have the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI, but it is an issue that many international agreements are optional for countries. And, there's a lot of people who say that international law isn't even really law, which personally I don't agree with, but there is a really important question there of, well, what's the point in putting so much time and resources into these lengthy negotiations that can take years and years and years just to create one treaty or one international document? And I think it is still important to go through those processes, even though they are really time consuming, because having international standards sets some kind of a framework for countries to base their own domestic policies around. Um, and another issue is that the tech is developing so much more quickly than the law. Law in general isn't very fast to develop, even within individual countries. But international law is a whole nother thing, because imagine having 200 countries coming together with completely different cultural standards, completely different legal systems, perspectives, economic priorities, trying to agree on one short set of rules. It's such a major task, and it's so difficult to reach an agreement on these things. And it's quite worrying because the tech is developing so quickly, but the law is slow to follow. Then international law is even slower to follow behind that. So even if we did create a legally binding international AI treaty, for example, it could become outdated quite quickly, because we really can't predict where AI is going. At this point, it's already feeling so futuristic, at least to me personally. But who knows, next year or within 2 years or 5 years, AI could look completely different to how it does today. And it's almost impossible to predict that. Like 10, 15 years ago when we were growing up, we all thought that hard copy CDs and DVDs would be around forever. And then so quickly they got replaced by streaming services like Netflix and Spotify. And now you don't even see DVD players anymore. And that's just one example of how tech is evolving so, so quickly. So I think it's really important that countries focus on developing their own domestic laws, because those are the legally binding agreements. Um, in my country, Australia, the government recently updated our criminal law to include deepfake porn, which is a really, really, really scary issue. But I think that this is a really great example of how governments should be actively reviewing and reforming their law so that it doesn't fall far behind current tech. Obviously, the law is always going to be behind the technology, but I think the best we can do is to try and keep the gap between the pace of the tech and the pace of the law small so that they follow closely together.
Yeah, based on what you said, it seems like everything is just developing so much faster. And as a student, I feel like my view of AI is very small because it's only centered around what it looks like for me and my generation. I had no idea that it was already getting infiltrated into the law where fake court cases and fake sources are being used, which that was just baffling for me to hear. But all of us here on this podcast today are Gen Z. So, arguably, can you say that the algorithm has raised us in the sense of like our lives on social media, on like Instagram and TikTok? What's it like being part of a generation that's coming of age in an era of climate crisis, tech disruption, the brain rot, wormholes online, ChatGPT, all of it?
I saw this post on Pinterest earlier today, and it was like, oh, my theory is that humans were never meant to be this overstimulated, and that's why we're all so anxious all the time. Um, which I think speaks a lot to what you're saying there, Chiara, about how we are so much more overstimulated and overloaded with information and data than our parents or grandparents or great grandparents ever were. And that can be really overwhelming. And I definitely agree that so many people are stuck in the doom scroll loops and the wormholes online, and that can be really hard to navigate as a young person, whether it's navigating relationships or your career path or your family relationships. Having such a loud and constant influx of information and contradicting perspectives at such a fast pace, for me, it feels really unnatural. Like, I feel like my brain is a bit like, what's going on? I feel like I should be frolicking in a meadow, um, instead of watching, like 20-second Instagram reels that don't really have any meaning or positive impact on my life. Um, and yeah, I think the algorithm has raised us. Not all of us, but for those of us who have grown up in communities where having tech devices from a young age is normal. Absolutely. Personally, I got Instagram and Snapchat when I was in year 4, so that's like, oh my gosh, what is that? Something like 10 years old in Australia, which looking back on, I think is crazy. That is so young to be online. But that just felt normal at the time. People were getting social media really young, and I think that's definitely had a massive impact on our development, our brains, and because this technology is all so new, we don't yet have enough research on the long-term impacts of excessive screen time use. I mean, we've already got reports emerging saying that, yeah, look, it's not good news, the impact of too much screen time on us, but I think it will be really fascinating to see long term over the decades what the research says about that. Personally, I deleted social media when I was 17. I'm now 22, because I was on it for so many years, and I got to a point where I felt really exhausted by the constant influx of information and burnt out by it in my personal life. So I just deleted it, and honestly, no regrets. I would really recommend that to anyone who feels overwhelmed by too much content or who feels like it's a waste of time. I think social media can be really amazing, and there are some really great benefits to it, like mobilizing social movements and sharing perspectives and those kind of things. But I think when you're using it in a way which is more like watching reels or TikToks for 10 hours, then um, it's not very healthy. And it's important to be intentional about our relationships with tech as young people, I think.
I also wanted to add on to that. I think I remember I got Snapchat or Instagram for the first time when I was around like 13. And I remember being like, everyone already has it around me, like I need it too. And now looking back on it, I'm like 13 is like still quite young in my head to be using Snapchat and like Instagram. And I feel like especially now like Instagram has become such a platform to really market yourself off. So you're really just comparing yourself to other people and kind of looking at what everyone else is doing. And I think,
Really.
yeah, and that can be so, I think, dangerous, especially I also have like seen that like people are starting these platforms younger and younger, and you can sometimes I think really see the shift in how people interact and kind of what it means to be a child to just play. But when we look at kind of this and we do see that we've grown up with using these tools, do you also think that we are more aware of everything going on, or like that we're in a unique position to kind of lead the change? Or are we just trying to kind of carry on and survive basically everything that's happening and to survive the AI chaos?
Yeah, it's another great question. Yeah, I do think that we are more aware. Um, it does seem that Gen Z now is so much more informed than, well, not necessarily more informed than previous generations, but more so that we are exposed to a wider variety of perspectives, which I think is really exciting and quite interesting to look at in a kind of bigger picture lens of humanity way. Like, isn't it incredible that me as a 22-year-old student from Australia, I'm sitting here talking to you, Lina, and Chiara from other countries around the world, all through the power of the internet. And if we had just stayed in our hometowns and we'd never accessed this technology, we would never have been able to connect with these amazing people from other places, and like the work that you guys are doing at Second Life, like all of these amazing youth-led movements, we wouldn't be able to access those without the internet. So I do think that we're uniquely positioned to build a better world through the power of the internet, but I think it really requires young people to be intentional about using technology for good, because I think if we just get too stuck in the short term dopamine cycles of watching TikToks instead of using technology as this incredible, vast opportunity that it is, I think it would be a waste. Like, it's incredible to think that from your phone or from your computer, you can learn almost any language that you want. You can read about the history of every country in the world. You can learn so many things and build so many things and get inspired and inspire others. And we are seeing all of these beautiful things unfold on the internet. But then the flip side of that is so much depression and anxiety coming from chronic online use. So, yeah, I think the internet and AI is such a unique thing where it is just such a two-sided coin, you know? I think we often are fed these really black and white narratives that are politically driven of AI is good or AI is bad. And I think it's really important that we bring to the conversation nuance and different perspectives and empathy because the algorithms themselves obviously favor content that is a lot more um, extreme, a lot more inflammatory, a lot more heavily politicized. So we're not seeing perspectives that are more nuanced and realistic go viral as much because it's simply just not shocking or confronting enough to get the millions of views. So I think it's really important that we bring that realism to the conversation, definitely.
Yes, for sure. I think what you said just there about how it seems right now that it's very black and white, and you're either on the side of AI is good or AI is bad. And over the time where people are squabbling over their opinions, the AI is just continuously developing into something that we don't understand. And there needs to be a better collective opinion on AI because it can't reach a point where it's like humans versus technology. And today there's such an interesting convergence between the AI movement and the global push for climate and environmental justice. Do you think these two worlds of tech and sustainability are communicating effectively enough?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Chiara, because on one hand, you have a lot of people who protest using AI because of its environmental impacts. But then on the other hand, you have groups that are using AI in really amazing, creative ways, which help sustainability, just like Second Life, obviously. And yeah, again, it comes back to that point of it's so nuanced and not black and white, and it can be multiple things at the same time. And I think that if we all collectively agree to use AI to achieve sustainability and for good and in many different issues outside of sustainability as well, it really does have the power to change our world in these amazing ways and create new innovation and new projects and ideas and ways of thinking that we haven't even thought of before. And AI is really exciting because it brings with it the power of solutions and creating solutions to really complex issues that humans have spent too long fighting over to be able to solve ourselves. So I think it's really exciting. And I think if we don't fall into the political trap of AI is good versus bad, left versus right, then we can use it for all of its amazing positives to help sustainability. But I think that also requires critically analyzing the systems themselves and prioritizing sustainable system design at the very beginning of the AI life cycle because there's not really much point in using AI for sustainable projects if the AI system itself is extremely like energy intensive or water intensive and if it's not actually good for the environment in the first place. So I think that holistic approach of looking at the entire life cycle of the AI system can really help in building a more sustainable world.
And we wanted to kind of to wrap up our podcast recording and also to kind of give maybe some more summarized insights. We wanted to do something which we haven't really done before, and we wanted to do kind of some rapid fire reflections. I'll throw out a couple of ideas or development, and Charlotte, you can tell us in a sentence or two how you see them through the law of AI. Does that sound clear?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, so the first point we wanted to talk about is AI generated political content. What do you feel about? How do you feel about that?
Oh, I think this one is a bit worrying because AI generated political content can be a real threat to democracy if misinformation is not very carefully regulated and avoided.
And algorithms used in a hiring process.
This has been a big one where we've seen bias introduced. So it depends how the system is used and how the model is designed. But I think if the systems are designed well and designers are deliberately foreseeing and preventing bias in their systems, then algorithms can be great to boost productivity.
Okay, cool. And what's your take on climate modeling, which is powered by machine learning?
I think this is really exciting if the machine learning systems are designed well. Machine learning can do really amazing things like improve the accuracy of predicting extreme weather events, and this is something I'm really excited about.
And lastly, we have one more bullet point wanted to touch upon. Um, what do you think of data privacy in the age of wearables, like Apple Watches, smart glasses? What's your take on that?
This is a really interesting current issue, and a lot of people are quite worried about their data being used from wearing these devices, which I think is a really valid concern. And I think this is one of many of those examples where it's important that we have robust policies that do protect our data privacy, particularly for things like wearable technology.
Well, Charlotte, this has been such a super informative conversation. I've really enjoyed learning and speaking with you. Thank you for helping us think more critically, and hopefully, the role of AI is in shaping a just and equitable future. For our listeners who want to follow your work or learn more about these issues, where can they find you?
I love connecting with new people on LinkedIn, so feel free to add me there. My username is Charlotte Carls, Carles, or you can find out more about our organization at www.genzabroad.com.
And before we kind of close off, I feel it might also be interesting for our listeners to have maybe a bit more of a brief intro to Gen Z. You mentioned it a bit at the beginning, but could you kind of talk a tiny bit more about what exactly it is and like how it helps Gen Z and a bit more into detail about those things, possibly?
Yeah, of course. So we're a youth-led not-for-profit organization founded in Western Australia, but we now connect people across different countries. And one of the main things that we do is we publish articles written by young people from all around the world. And this came about from the idea that we were talking about before of feeling overwhelmed with social media and too much data and too much content. So we really wanted to just create a safe space online where young people can learn about the world and learn about young people in other countries without all of the noise and marketing and influences that come with social media. So all of those articles can be found on the library page of our website, and we also actively accept articles from new young people who want to have their writing shared on that platform. One of the other things that we do is we're running a financial literacy program at the moment, which has been done in 3 cities in Australia so far, but expanding. And that program is all about equipping young people with the basic tools that we all need to survive adulthood. Because I'm not sure about you guys in your countries, but in Australia, we basically all graduate high school not having any idea how to do practical things like do our taxes, how to invest, how to budget, how to save. We all finish school knowing that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but we don't actually have those practical skills to navigate young adulthood. And that's something that at Gen Z Abroad we want to change. So we run in person workshops with young people and we provide accessible education on how to build your relationship with money in a way that's realistic for young people. Um, so, yeah, those are the two main things that we're doing at the moment.
Oh, thank you. And I think, yes, like as we continue to build technologies and kind of continue to live in a world where AI is still very present, maybe having platforms like Gen Z Abroad where we can just submit our own articles kind of through a non-filtered, non-media, like, non-political related, um, kind of lens that's driving the articles, but it's really just our own thoughts and our own opinions can be so, so valuable. And I also wanted us to all remember that progress is not always about what we can do and doing it as quickly as possible, but it's about what we should be doing. And so again, we should also think about, again, is social media, is it really helping us grow and helping us learn more and develop, or is it keeping us back? The same thing goes with AI. And and then do we see it as it all depends on how we use it and what we should be doing with it rather than, trying to finish an essay maybe as quickly as possible, to actually researching, to actually like trying to find the hidden issues and finding those sources that are real and not just, kind of blank AI sources that ChatGPT has given us. And so, yeah, Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us today on our podcast.
Thank you so much, Lina and Chiara. It was so great to chat with you guys.
And yeah, to stay up to date on Second Life's work, everyone who's listening would love for you to subscribe to the podcast to get notifications when we release new episodes and visit our website, secondlife.ngo, to either join or host a cleanup, apply as a volunteer, donate or partner. And you can also follow us on Instagram at secondlife.ngo for some more sneak peeks at what we get up to. And finally, for our listeners, thank you all for your time tuning in today. And we hope to have you back next week where we will have another very special guest joining us. So see you all then, and thank you all for joining.
Thank you.